Regular meeting of the Wyckoff Township Committee is now called to order. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. I'm going to have the invocation by Rabbi Kaplan from Chabad in Franklin Lakes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and all residents of Wyckoff. I want to start with a small story. The patriarch of a very large and influential and affluent family passed away, and his final instructions before he passed were to be buried in his favorite pair of Argyle socks. And unfortunately, when he passed, the burial society, which controls and is within its jurisdiction what is allowed and not, reminded the family that the Jewish tradition is that all people be buried equally in white shrouds, and it would not be permitted. Well, his family was not one to be deterred, and they appealed to the greatest Jewish authorities in the city, who once again rejected it. They further appealed to the greatest Jewish religious authorities in Israel, who once again turned it down. The patriarch, the philanthropist, was buried like everybody else. When they opened up his will after burial, the will began with these words: "By now, my dear family, you all know that no matter a man's influence or wealth, the only thing he takes with him to the next world are his good deeds." I'd like to offer a little prayer that God in heaven promote our thinking and understanding of love and peace and unity, that we all do good and be good, and that the product of tonight's session be one in which you are guided by on high with wisdom, counsel, and justice and righteousness, and that the actions all result in goodness and kindness for all the residents of this town. And in conclusion, there was a Jewish prayer that says, "Barucheinu Avinu Kolanu Ke'echad," bless us all, our Father, as one. Because when we are all one, we are truly ready to receive blessing. May God bless the mayor, council, and all the residents of this town, and God bless America. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Nancy, can I get a reading of the Open Public Meetings Act, please?
This regular business meeting of the Township Committee of the Township of Wyckoff is now in session. In accordance with Section 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, I wish to advise that notice of this meeting has been posted on the bulletin board in Memorial Town Hall and on our Township Committee website page. A copy has been filed with the Township Clerk, and copies were emailed to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and to the North Jersey Herald News, all newspapers with general circulation throughout the Township of Wyckoff. At least 48 hours prior to this meeting, the agenda was similarly posted, filed, and emailed to said newspapers.
Thank you. Can I get a roll call of the Township Committee?
Mr. Boonstra?
Here.
Mr. Madigan?
Here.
Mr. Melchione?
Here.
Mr. Shanley?
Here.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Here. And Nancy, we're back live with audio?
Everything's working.
Wonderful. Okay, so I apologize. I'm going to read my statement from earlier. I understand that the audio was not working particularly well, so I just want to reread it, just so that people can get it. Sorry, bear with me 1 minute. Thank you all for being here tonight. We always welcome public engagement. The reason that most of you are here this evening is because of the proposed change to the date of the Board of Education election and opportunity for the entire township to vote on the Board of Education budget. I'd like to lay out some of our reasons for the change, and then we'll have our Board of Ed liaison, Tom Madigan, expand further. 9 years ago, Chris Christie spearheaded a move to change the date of the Board of Education elections to November after decades of separate elections. Over the past few years, the Board of Education elections have become highly politicized. Candidates have been handpicked by each political party. I do not believe that political elections at the national, state, and local level should be commingled with the Board of Education elections. With the increase in popularity of vote by mail, the Board of Education candidates are relegated to the back of the ballot with well over 20% less engagement than the political candidates. In a highly politicized time, the Board of Education candidates in elections would receive more non-political attention and scrutiny away from the November election. The budget of the entire Township Committee of Wyckoff, the entire Township of Wyckoff is approximately $20 million. The budget for the K-8 Board of Education is approximately $45 million. In 2006, the budget was about $25 million. The student body has had no appreciable difference in numbers. A 2% increase is close to $1 million per year. Fiscal conservatism is extremely important to the residents of Wyckoff, and they deserve the opportunity to review, question, and vote on a budget of this magnitude. As to the cost of the election, Oakland, which has their elections in April, has informed us that they spend $20,000 to have an April election. And the fact that residents were supposedly told that in Wyckoff it would be significantly more than that is just another example of the need for a budget referendum. Finally, the Township Committee heard from a multitude of residents about the situation over the past few months at Eisenhower Middle School. All of New Jersey was reading articles about the issues going on there. When the Township Committee and residents of Wyckoff wanted answers, they were stonewalled. The taxpayers deserve to know the facts about legal fees, buyouts, and a budget referendum would afford them an opportunity to get real answers about what's going on at our schools. Mr. Madigan?
Yeah, before I repeat the comments that I made at the 7 p.m. work session, I'd just like to recognize and thank members of our K-8 Board of Education, Dan McHugh, Tim Murtha, and Frank Barbagallo, who joined us this evening. Welcome, and thank you very much for taking the time to attend the meeting and for all that you do on the school board with your time. We appreciate it. So it's 7 o'clock, and then I'm going to add a couple of comments at the end. I just want to comment about, as the liaison sitting in the back last night at the very spirited K-8 meeting, this is what I heard, and this is what I said at the 7 o'clock meeting. I heard last night that this will cost $50,000 or $60,000, but in reality, the recent Wyckoff election, which was held at the primary, cost this township $16,000. You heard the mayor comment that in Oakland, it was $20,000. It was also mentioned that it's not good to have voters in the schools for security reasons. But I just want to comment that polling places are not in the schools, and this was the reason the township moved the polling places, which was well over 10 years ago. There was a concern about what happens if the voters are against the budget. So the last time it occurred was in May of 2020, and the reduction to the budget ensured that it would not impact or reduce any educational programs. And I quote from that resolution at that time, the reduction represents additional fund balance anticipated to be received in the fiscal year 2010-2011. Since this change has no impact upon expenditures, but rather only increase in revenue, it can be made without affecting in any way the education of our children. And they also commented that that particular budget was $31 million versus 10, 11 years later, where it's $45 million. It was also mentioned last night that more people vote in the November general election, which is a partisan election. Yet historically, the November election, only 50% of those that vote above, which, if you recall the voting for the various candidates for offices, only 50% or less voted for school board candidates, which are horizontal, and in 2020, they were actually on the back of the ballot, which tells you something about the enthusiasm and the focus in November in school boards. April will also ensure a public focus on school board members, along with the educational and financial direction of the Board of Education. Currently, the county superintendent approves the budget. So after the K-8 district puts their budget together, they actually don't discuss it or approve it. They send it to the county superintendent, who approves it, brings it back, and then they approve it. I think the issue is, many people have told us, and it makes some sense, that shouldn't parents and the residents reaffirm the budget for their schools, not an appointed county superintendent? Just to summarize last night's comments, we heard from so many from the public that they kept speaking about and talking about transparency, communications, accountability. It's obvious that the parents, as well as the public, are frustrated, and that's why they've consistently been reaching out to the Township Committee. And we clearly understand our role as well as the Board of Ed, and we know the Board of Ed is autonomous for their policies, their practices, and their budgeting, and that does not change. But more importantly, the K-8 board is 47%, or almost half, of our residents' precious tax dollars. And just to continue a few comments, just to help people in the audience, and again, we talked about a business meeting that we always have. So some of you may not have been here before, but we always have a business meeting, which a work session prior to the business meeting, which gives us the opportunity to exchange thoughts, ideas, to hear from the public, and then we have a public meeting. But I heard some of the comments I just want to comment on was the time of the notice on Friday was actually 12:15, so that's 15 minutes past noon. There was also a comment about the election in November, and it's correct under the law in November, as long as the budget is less than 2%, it gives any Board of Education, and this board, the ability to do whatever they wish to do without the accountability, which has been the source of so many complaints. In fact, last year's budget, people recall, was 1.99%. And for the record, the school budget last year, just for the calendar year, or the school year, had a $3.2 million surplus, which fortunately, with a little bit of suggestion and prodding, the board did a nice job in using a lot of that surplus to actually reduce the impact to our taxpayers. And the other question I had was, I'm just assuming, sitting up here, that members here have copies of our agenda and a copy of the resolution. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to request a motion to open the public comment period, 5 minutes per speaker for public comments on any governmental issue that a member of the public feels may be of concern to residents of the Township of White.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein?
Yes. I invite members of the public up. Please state your name and address.
So I just came from coaching football, so I have, last time I was here was 2 years ago, I think, after we won the Super Bowl. His son was on the team. My name's Tim Murtha, 383 Canterbury Lane in Wyckoff. I'm on the Board of Ed in Wyckoff. As you know, I'm also a member of the Finance Committee. I'm not the best public speaker, unless I'm yelling at the kids on the football field, so I'm just going to read off this. It's just about a page. I just want to read a few things. I'm not a political guy. I'm just a numbers guy. All right, so this current year, 2021-22 budget, Franklin Lakes increased theirs 3.97%, and it came from using waivers and their bank cap that they had set aside. Oakland increased theirs 2.29%, using same thing, used cap they had put away. Rampo Indian Hills was a 2% increase, and in Wyckoff we had a 0.8% decrease. All right, so in the 5 years I've been in town, been on the board, I've been on the Finance Committee the last 2 years, we have not gone over the 2% cap. Okay, this year we had a flat budget, and as Mr. Madigan said, we were able to return some money as a surplus back to the taxpayer. $744,867 to be exact was from surplus, and $312,415 came from the extra state aid that was given to us. I'm in the Finance meeting. I'm constantly saying, this state aid that we're getting, it could go away tomorrow. We have to be smart about this. So that $312,000 came in, went back to the taxpayers. Okay, so we had a bigger expected surplus, as it was mentioned before. Okay, some of the reasons why we had this big surplus. COVID hit, March was a shutdown. This year, reduced expenses. No field trips, no after-school activities, no sports, right? We had 2 years in a row in reduction of healthcare costs, okay? We had 12 teachers retire at a high salary. You hire new teachers at, half the price, because they're step one, step two, all right? We also had several rounds of federal COVID aid that was given, to offset expenses. So we had all of this surplus, okay? So we do that surplus, we put it into, the capital, we put it into capital reserves so we can turn around and fund our capital projects. So some of the things that we've done recently, new HVAC systems, all the elementary schools, and additional air conditioning in rooms that did not have any air conditioning. A new nurse's office at Coolidge with an adult bathroom, I think it's ADA ready now. New roofs, we did a partial roof at EMS and a roof at Coolidge. We built out a kindergarten room recently in Washington with another bathroom, right? We did an electrical upgrade at Sycamac with a generator. We're now doing that electrical upgrade at EMS. We have not had to do a bond referendum to do any of that, okay? This year, Lincoln, there's been a big push, Lincoln, we needed an extra kindergarten teacher because we had 21 or 22 in a class. We had an extra kindergarten teacher so we could get our class sizes down to 16 or 17, which is better. I'm a teacher. It's better learning environment with 16 or 17, right? So those are all the things that we've done this year. Back in 2011, okay, when the town, when there was vote in April and it was determined, the vote would determine, we lost, the budget was voted down by 22 votes. So here's what happened, right? The town council reduced the budget by $478,000 at the same time that the state took away $1 million of state aid. So therefore, we had to eliminate middle school teachers, we had to eliminate a secretary, we had to eliminate maintenance projects for the school. Here's where it gets good. We had to notify all non-tenured staff that we can't offer them a contract until we figure out what the new budget's going to be. So we might have a teacher who's been there for 3 years, who's a fantastic teacher, and we say, can't give you a contract, we don't know what the budget's going to be. So they could go somewhere else. Also, not only we can't offer new contracts, we can't go out and get new hires. If 10 people retire, we can't go out to the good schools and hire teachers that are coming out of college because we don't know what our budget is. All right? So, to me, so like I said, with the budget defeated, we're on hold, and we can't do anything. So by pushing this to April, and if the budget gets voted down, we're on hold. It's a 30-day work period. It puts a big, constraint on us. People come to this town because of our schools, right? And I think I've read a pretty good list of the things that we've done, and I think by pushing this to April, it could cause a lot of harm. People move to this town for the school system. If this starts to happen and then we start to lose good teachers, our school systems go down, our housing values go down. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I kind of would just like to make a comment, not directly related to that, but, so Mr. Madigan and I have been on the Finance Committee for the past 4 years. And while we do appreciate all of the many, many projects that the school board has taken on, Tom and I sit and we make very difficult decisions about what to do with taxpayer money. This building, we've talked about putting on a new roof for many, many years, but it is not a necessity. And so we, as a Finance Committee, have to make very, very, very difficult decisions. And unfortunately, when we feel that when a budget goes up by 1.99%, that maybe those very difficult decisions are not being made, and the township needs to have a right to look at the budgets. As we've said, this has gone up in the past 15 years by $20 million. Our entire budget of the Township of Wyckoff is $20 million. So we sit and make very, very hard decisions. We would like to do many, many projects in town, and unfortunately, dollars can only be stretched so far. So, anyone else coming to speak? Anyone? I'm sorry?
Hi again. My name is Steve Warren, Butternut Avenue. Been here for many years. Someone had given me this, it looks like it's the proposal that's going to be read in, okay, with, by you folks. I would like to say, that gentleman had a compelling argument. That gentleman had a very, very compelling argument. And I would submit that, and I understand your point, difficult financial decisions. These people have difficult financial decisions also. And I would like to think that here in Wyckoff, probably our children are our most important product, kind of an old GE saying. So that fellow had a really compelling argument, no question about it. And that whole notion of not being able to hire people, the tenure deal. I have a granddaughter who's in that situation, and it's real. It's real. What I'd like to do is focus for just a minute or so on a couple of the things that I was asking before with regards to what are the compelling reasons. Based on what I'm seeing here, there are two whereas, if I can use that term, that state the reasons. And I'm in a criticism mode, not an attack mode, okay? So it says, whereas this will ensure improved communications from the local K-8 school district to the public. Well, so repeat it. Whereas this will ensure. How do we know it will ensure? That's a wish. That's an assumption. That's a hope, okay? It's not a compelling reason, all due respect. And the other one was, whereas moving the Board of Education election to April allows the residents to focus on this particular election. That's an assumption again, okay? That's an opinion. That's not a compelling reason. I think that we here in Wyckoff know that our voting record over the years has been about 50%, and we get pretty good turnout, okay? You had made, Ms. Mayor, you had made earlier a comment in this 8 o'clock session where something to the effect of politicizing the election. My assumption, my belief, is that if it goes out and trickles out to April, it will be more politicized than in November, okay? I have a couple questions, but you don't have to answer them now. But I would like to see them answered in the discussion that apparently you're going to have, primarily because of Mr. Shanley's situation, is what's going to happen to the a board member who's a 3-year member and maybe his or her term ends before April, doesn't get to be voted in again. You know, how's this going to work? So you have to, help us understand how, are there any little landmines out there that you haven't thought of, or you maybe have thought of, that could kind of go off and maybe make things a little messy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Mayor, members of the committee, I'm Roger Clark. I've lived at 190 Wyckoff Ave for 14 years. I have a daughter at Coolidge, and I certainly appreciate all that you're doing for the town. A lot of good things that get lost in conversations like this. But obviously one of the reasons I think that many of us move here are because of the excellent schools. So this proposal to move the BOE election in a less timely and a lower turnout manner has me and a lot of others concerned. You gave your reasons why, but I have to wonder, and forgive me if I'm off here, but I have to ask, are there other reasons behind this? My takeaways from your reasons are it's going to improve turnout, it's going to improve focus, and it's going to lower the political temperature. Ms. Mayor, you said, I think, 20% lower engagement with back-of-the-ballot candidates during the general election. Mr. Madigan, you said 50% lower turnout. I'm not sure which it is, but I know our turnout, the general elections, is extraordinarily good in Wyckoff. We should be proud of that. I think it's often over 80%. So 20% less engagement, or even 50% less engagement off of 80% turnout is still better than 30 or 40% turnout in a special election. So I'm countering your argument there. In terms of public focus, you talked about the concerns at Eisenhower, which we all have. Obviously, COVID, the budget concerns. there is a lot of focus right now by everyone's comments tonight show this, that there's a ton of focus on the issues right now. So when it isn't sooner rather than later, arguably a better time to have a referendum on who those members are that lead our schools, rather than waiting till April. And third, not politicizing this is really peculiar, because I have to ask, and forgive me if I'm off here, but is this because your preferred candidates did not get favorable placement on the ballots? Is it because, and meaning, is it because that moving the election improves the chances that your preferred candidates get elected? Is it because, or perhaps you don't care about the $20,000 of additional costs? And I'm curious, are you willing to forego your stipends that you receive as committee members to help offset that cost? Because, like me, I care about fiscal conservatism and fiduciary responsibility, and I know you do too. So that's something I might ask you to consider. And dare I ask, is this a maneuver because you somehow want to remake our schools in a way with leadership and board members that are less interested in diversity and inclusion? And certainly the tenor of the Board of Ed meetings suggests that there are candidates out there that share those views. So by the 11th hour nature of this, whether it was at 12:15 or 4:30 p.m., at a time when even town boards don't even have quorums, I would argue that there was a dire lack of transparency here, and that's really unfortunate. So I'm going to assume that the answer to these questions that I've asked, most of the questions, if not all of the questions, the answer is yes. The rabbi said, do good, be good. At best, what seems to be politically motivated actions are really sad. At worst, they're voter suppressive, and I think arguably can represent a scary abuse of power. Thank you.
I wasn't necessarily going to answer that, but let's put it out there. The Wyckoff Democratic Club supported Brett Trafficant. The candidates that the Republican Club supported, as I said, this has become incredibly politicized, beat your candidate 2 years in a row. If the Republicans wanted to make this politically advantageous to them, they would leave it in November.
Well, my understanding, of course, is that the Board of Education is nonpartisan, as it should be.
I'm sorry, but let's focus on reality. They have become completely politicized. The Wyckoff Democratic Club
Has no candidates in this November's election, and is not explicitly supporting any other candidates because it's nonpartisan.
I'm sorry, but in the past, for the past 2 years...
I got this one.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm speaking.
Okay.
In the elections preceding this election, both the Wyckoff Democratic Club and the Wyckoff Republican Club have openly supported candidates in the election. I understand there are some who are nonpartisan. I understand you're nonpartisan. But in the past 3 years, we have moved to be completely partisan in our Board of Education elections. And one of my goals in doing this is to take that out and move it away from the November elections, where we are a completely politicized society.
I got it. Let me just, hold on. I'd like to say something. Look, I've been on the board ever for 5 years, okay? I don't know what anybody's party is on the Board of Ed. In my 5 years of being, in every discussion we've had, it has not been political. Never have we talked about it. It's never come up Republican, Democrat. I know what parties they belong to, but it's never come up. We make decisions that we think are best for the students. Might not always agree with them, but I don't have a horse in the race. I'm on the football field, I don't have a kid out there. I have 5 kids that are out of the school system, right? I'm doing what I think is best. I don't care Republican, Democrat, what is best. And that's what it's been so far. But I am a little afraid
that it is becoming political. Okay?
It
And prior to,
absolutely
let me just say, prior to this, it has not been. I have never had an argument with somebody about politics. But in the last couple months, it's becoming. I'm just stating the facts. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you have to come up to
Can you
the microphone and
Can you
it's,
recognize first?
yeah. Sure, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, being the candidate, that
Can you
beat
please
traffic...
just state your name and your address?
My name is Frank Barbagallo. I'm a board member, 295 Squawbrook Road, Wyckoff, New Jersey. I'm just going to say on record that being the person that beat Trafficant, I agree completely with the statement from my colleague on the board, okay? That when we're in the board, despite whatever political views I have, we do not discuss politics. Everyone is united. So I've sat back and I've listened to all this, and I've been trying to wrap my head around why we're changing this. I haven't heard one valid argument. Honestly, everything that my colleague said on the board, I agree with. So I'm going to respectfully not agree with this decision at this time. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to make a statement? Oh, May, sorry.
It's me.
May Bogdansky, 430 Russell Ave. My mind's all over the place, but I'll just try to put it all together. Yesterday was the Board of Ed meeting, and I have to say, starting off, that social media is the biggest poison for this town, as it is for the whole country. And weeks prior, you hear the buzz, this, CRT, the curriculum, blah, blah, blah. Everybody gets fired up, there's petitions flying around, everything's, misunderstood, or the sources are not reliable. So last night I spoke to some of the Board of Ed members, and I got something from the horse's mouth, okay? And I was more clear on certain things that I wasn't before because of social media. So that was one. Then today, there's things flying around again, and there's petitions flying around again. So I just happened to be lucky, and I bumped into one of the members here today, and I asked, why is this happening? And this person listed 3 reasons that I found logical. I've been on the PTO for many years, Carla knows, and we served together, and I've sat on that desk, and I know what the Board of Ed goes through. There's been times where we were like begging people to vote because they had people driving to the Christian Healthcare Center to pass, to say no to the budget. So I know how difficult that is. However, we've had problems in the past too, and I think we do need some accountability on both ends, even here. Everything we do in this town should be for our residents and our children. So I do appreciate the accountability. Not that I'm saying there's anything that's being misspent, but we should be accountable. There's checks and balances for our country as well. And I do think I'm not saying it's political on the board itself. It's prior to the election. I do agree that it's become political. And I, for one, would like to know the candidates in November in the primaries. I don't know who's running. And really, people, I can tell you firsthand, people are saying, who should I vote to? People who are not active are coming to me and saying, who should I vote to? So I think the plus is in April, we might be able to focus on our board election, the Board of Ed. There was one more thing, and I can't remember what it was. But I think we should all be open to it. I think we should all remember that this is our town, and it's got to stop. We are a political town, and we should be able to communicate and have some transparency on both ends. And again, people are relying on social media to hear from you guys and the Board of Ed, and it's very inaccurate. So I just wanted to express that, and I appreciate what you guys do. Thank you so much, and on the Board of Ed, too. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Ed Calpagian, Fairfield Road. Forgive me, public and board, you got a bear with me because I brought the wrong glasses and can't read
And
all my notes here.
Can you give us your full address?
488 Fairfield Road, Wyckoff. Like any other parent or taxpayer, having two kids in the school system, I'm going to state master the obvious here. We're all more hyper-vigilant with everything that's been going on. Obviously, COVID threw a corkscrew into the works. We've been trying to go to more board meetings and pay more attention. You have issues like curriculum. We have the issues with, the principal and vice principal. We have issues with a teacher that stayed in the school system for a number of years who was accused of egregious things that seem to be swept under the rug. So people are concerned. I think my biggest concern, and I was going to speak last night, by the way, Melissa did a great job presenting the check. I was there. I did see that. At these meetings, it's taken an ugly turn, and it's really not the board. I think we lose some of the board members when we try to make good points. Unfortunately, like everything else in today's world, it's all a political statement. People get up, you could feel the tension. Somebody you don't know is walking to the mic. The board members and the public, are they right? Are they left? Are they red? Are they blue? What are they going to say? Are they for this? Are they against that? And we're not having any discussion. It's a fight. One meeting, I'm going back to all the live meetings that I've attended and the ones online, but especially the live ones, you get a better feel when you're there. And you see this happen. And the first meeting, 15 people that may be viewed as on the right, who, CRT and masking is the two biggest issues right now. CRT and masking come up. Somebody makes a statement. Whatever side they're on, if we all stop and listen, we kind of all want the same thing. But what's getting lost in translation, this is supposed to be about the kids. But instead, it's a political statement. So people point fingers that you're moving this because you want to make a political statement, but they're making a political statement. So the argument could be used on both ends. And that ugliness kind of has to stop. I wanted to say this last night before people got up and spoke. Last night was probably one of the better, more compelling meetings there were, because people actually listened to different trains of thought, but we're still not there. The ugliness that's happening in politics today is rearing its ugly head and affecting the school board for our children. And it's kind of tiresome. Not everybody who wants to inquire, question, or speak up against CRT is necessarily a racist or against inclusion. Just as somebody who's supporting it, likes it, and says, hey, do what you want, they're not necessarily trying to indoctrinate kids' minds and poison them into one train of thought. We should be able to have these discussions. We don't. The funny thing is the word came up yesterday. If it came up 10 times, it came up 100 times, and it came up again tonight, transparency. Transparency is a corporate buzzword that has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. It's like me saying to you, well, in all honesty, like everything I said before was a lie, but now I'm telling you the truth. Transparency is an optic. And I'm going to give you a neutral point of view of the optics that I've been having. And I mean no disrespect. I have a lot of tremendous personal and professional respect for the three gentlemen who are here today from the school board, as I do most of the people on the school board. I serve on a board. It's a thankless job. Transparency, when you hold meetings at 6:30 on a Monday, when most people work or have kids that may play a sport or whatnot, it's hard to get attendance there. Transparency is an optic when you have a 15 to 22 page agenda that you try to pass in one vote and hope nobody questions you. Transparency when one board member on the board last night questioned a fiscal item on the list and said, it questioned it and was told, you're new, you don't understand, we've been doing it that way for 20 years. Right now, with everything going on, as a parent, as a taxpayer, and I think I speak for others, maybe I just speak for myself, no, we don't want to hear this is what we've done for the last 20 years. What's happened the last 20 years doesn't apply now with all the changes. And I'm not questioning fiscally, because honestly, I know Tim personally. Couldn't have a better person on the finance end handling matters for us, and I'm comfortable with that. But again, transparency is an optic. Are we being told everything? We ask questions of that board without answers, and perhaps it's the way the meetings run. It's not the individuals themselves. It's the way the meetings run, where a question goes unanswered. The chairman of that board for 5 months in a row hadn't really spoken about any item due to curriculum or fiscal, okay? All right, last point. There were no items, anything fiscal or whatnot. Yesterday, he spoke for 25 minutes about the movement of this meeting. If the movement of this meeting brings more attention and people's focus to picking the right people, or maybe changing the dynamic of the board, or get more transparency, as they want to call it, I'm for it. If it's going to cost the town more money or cut the school budget for the kids, I'm against it.
Thank you, Ed.
No problem.
Good point. Good point.
Good evening. Jerry Weston, 249 Meadowbrook Road. By the way, an increase, I've heard a couple of points being made about the school budget in 2006, the school budget in 2010 and 11, and yeah, we know the budget's higher. That can't be a bad thing. It's got to be a good thing in Wyckoff. I can't think of anything we want to spend more money on than our kids. So, and by the way, it's not atypical of what's going on all over the United States, whether it be in K-8, high schools, colleges, life in general. I would make a suggestion, by the way. If we don't like the 2% cap, because that's $1 million, whatever that number is, maybe you make it inflation adjusted, like Social Security. So this year would be probably a bad number, but next year it might be a very good number. We might have deflation in terms of, I doubt it, but the point is that you can do it in a number of different ways. So my point here tonight is, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And in this particular case, I don't see where the process is broken. It seems that there are two major, quote-unquote, compelling reasons for doing this. One, which seems to have come up now, you want to depoliticize what you see as a political process of voting for a school board. I understand that. It's going to be politicized in April, believe me. Also, the turnout's probably going to be a lot lower. That's number one. Number two, it seems to be that we're trying to be fiscally conservative with the budget, and this is a way of doing it somehow. People get to vote on it, you get pissed off about things in life, and you decide, I'm going to vote this damn budget down. Generically, if you look back in the history of school budgets, in a town that's aging, in Wyckoff's case, I think the case, we're probably demographically getting younger, which is a good thing in terms of education. In general, people with fixed income don't like to pay more taxes. They don't like school budgets. They fail to understand that increased school budgets and better schools make their real estate, their houses, when they go to retire, more valuable. Now no one really cares because the entire housing market is going crazy and really doesn't matter. So I ask a few questions. First, when you make a change, you're really trying to solve a problem. So what problem are you really trying to solve here? That's number one. Second, how does this improve the quality of the process by changing to April? And third, do you have turnout? Instead of making statistics up, which we all like to do, why don't you take a little time, maybe a month, come back in September, table this whole thing, and give us more statistics in terms of turnout in November, turnout in April. What was the turnout back in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 versus what the turnout's been? We don't have enough facts. So you're doing it on a Friday. People are upset with the process to some extent. You announce it on a Friday. You vote it on a Monday. I think that this is a big enough decision that you can wait at least a month, put out more statistics, give out more information, have people have time to look at it, think about it. And if you really, really want to get people involved, this is the way to do it. This would really drum up a tremendous amount of support for our education system in terms of people getting involved and understanding it. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
I'd like to respond a little bit, and just the problem, as we've stated, is that 15 years ago, the budget was $25 million. And this year, it was $45 million. We have increased the school board budget by $20 million in the last 15 years.
Why is that different than any other budget in the United States?
Because
Why is
we,
it different than any other budget? Healthcare is up, institutions are up, colleges are up. Every education is more expensive.
you're out of order.
So
You're out of
talking about finite
order.
numbers that have nothing to do with reality.
You're out of order.
Calm down.
When the budget for the school board increases an average of 2%, it increases $1 million a year. And when I am hearing the budget, I'm hearing about bathrooms and roofs and things that Tom and I look at in the Wyckoff budget, and we say, we don't have the dollars this year. I'm not hearing about benefits to our children. I'm hearing about infrastructure projects. And when he mentioned that the kindergarten at Lincoln went to 16 kids, well, in the same year, the fourth grade at Lincoln went to 21 kids. So we're getting some misinformation. No, I am giving you absolute facts. And I'm sorry that you don't like them. No, next, I'm sorry, you're out of order.
I just want to respond.
No, I'm sorry, you don't get to
You're giving us
respond.
fixed numbers. You're not putting it in perspective. $1 million is $1 million. $1 million 20 years from now is going to look like $1. So what is the point of telling us
You
that
are
it's
out of
$20 million?
order.
Okay, I'm out of order.
And I'd like to mention that 2% of a number, when that number increases every single year, that 2% gets bigger. This year, it's $1 million.
That's the way it is in all statistics, by the way, it hasn't changed. That's the way it's been for all forever.
May I go?
Sure, that's
Thank
the way
you,
it's done.
thank you. Tom Bogdansky, 430 Russell Avenue, proud father of 3 children that, well, first thing I want to say is May forgot one thing. The one thing she forgot to say was that I'm her husband. And I'm a very proud husband. But we raised 3 children in town, and my eldest just became a doctor. Very proud of the school systems, teachers, all the people that serve this community. Extremely proud. My second eldest, my son, just finished his first year of medical school. Very proud. Through the school systems in Wyckoff. It's been tremendous. I have now a youngest going into 5th grade. I'm concerned. Things are different. It's not the same. And as a taxpayer and a dad, I have reservations. And I think when we talk about transparency, it's about being able to see what's happening. What are the numbers? Where are the numbers going? Where are my tax dollars going? So if we're going to do anything that's going to support our children for better education and transparency, the things that happened at Eisenhower, I had explained, my daughter actually asked me, she's going into 5th grade, about what happened. I think it's a travesty. And I think that we as parents and taxpayers need to be aware of these situations. But if this change is going to help us and help the school systems, the children and the education, I'm in favor of the move. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gina Ho. I am, 53 Princeton Avenue in Wyckoff. I'm in the Coolidge section. I'm the parent of Jasmine Ho, which some of you know, who's now finished school, and I don't like that because I want her back home. And I'm also the mom of Jasper Ho, who is about to start at Eisenhower in 6th grade. So I'm really here to talk on behalf of my kids because I think they're getting left out of the conversation. Teachers are getting left out of the conversation. The Board of Ed, you know, I have a lot of respect for them. I don't come here, you haven't seen me come to your meetings to fight you on anything. This is my first town committee meeting. But what I heard from the mayor is that she wants to replace the roof and she has to make hard decisions. I really don't want that money directed from the school budget and have cuts made to the school budget for political grandstanding. I don't know if that's a motivation. I don't really know any of you and your politics. I really just don't care. But what I do care about is that my kids are going to be going into a school district that has cuts. They don't have the supplies, the equipment. And I'd hate to see the roof get repaired here before the kids get what they need in the schools. I trust that you're experts at what you're doing, which is why you don't see me here fighting you. But I don't think you're experts in the education. Unless you're a teacher, a principal of the schools in this district, I have more trust that the Board of Ed are the experts in what our kids need. They're listening to the teachers. They're listening to the superintendent. They're the people who know what our kids need, whether it's more teachers, higher, qualified teachers. All of this decision goes back to you. It's now leaving the school district. It's now leaving the hands of the people that have the ability to make the changes within the schools. I don't think that the Board of Ed has wasted money, as you're suggesting. The cost of everything goes up. Even the cost of building materials during COVID. Everything is going up in price. The cost to hire teachers is going up. The cost to buy Chromebooks. We put a lot. This school district is amazing. We've been here, I think, 8 years. We bought here because we knew the property values were going to hold. But number one was we knew our kids were getting a better education here. We moved from Jersey City. We lived there. I was heavily involved with the board there. So I'm very familiar with what happens when the board doesn't have control. Because they don't have control there with a lot of things, from mismanagement. And when the town has control of something they're not experts in, this is a huge concern for me. So, things like the bathroom at Coolidge, in the nurse's office, my son has needed that for bleeding nose problems. You think that they're luxuries and they're not needed, but they are. And unless you're there and you understand it, you cannot make good decisions on this one thing. Please do not do this to our kids. I don't care about the politics. I'm sure if you cut the budget, it's going to look great when you run again for re-election. I don't care. Don't take the money from the Board of Ed and from the kids. They should be separate from you. Please be responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just like to note that by doing this, we are not taking money or putting the budget in our hands. We're giving the budget and decisions and transparency to every single taxpayer of Wyckoff. And my hope is that a budget is put out that the taxpayers vote yes on. That's my hope, that it is a fiscally responsible budget that the taxpayers vote yes on.
You're not going to reduce it.
We're not, there is no plan to reduce the
You're
budget.
watching social media or something.
But if we vote it down, then exactly what the Board of Ed said is going to happen. Then there's a delay. This impacts the children. So it's great that you want to get the budget down. I'm a taxpayer. Well done.
Next.
You can find ways to get the budget down without taking a single thing away from the kids.
Can we move to the next speaker,
Yeah,
please?
we're going to move to the next speaker, but I can say on behalf of my entire township committee that we have no interest in taking money from children. We are parents on this board. All we want is transparency, fiscal conservatism, and to take politics out of the Board of Ed. So next, please.
My name is Emily Olkowski. I live at 250 EC Terrace in Wyckoff, and I'm going into 8th grade at Eisenhower Middle School. I would like to speak about the comments that Mr. Madigan made at the June Board of Education meeting regarding the student-made posters in the hallways of my school. In May, in response to racist acts of vandalism and bullying at my school, all students engaged in an afternoon of making posters for the hallways under the direction of our advisory period teachers. We were told to go on our Chromebooks and research ideas for uplifting messages regarding diversity and inclusion and acceptance of our fellow students. In our advisory teams, we collaborated to make posters using school-acceptable words to encourage others to be more accepting and inclusive to people that might be different. At the June Board of Ed meeting, Mr. Madigan, the Township Committee liaison to the Board of Ed, made comments about posters. He said he was disheartened by seeing sexually explicit posters, Black Lives Matter, and inappropriate sex posters. He also said that it was totally inappropriate for any age. He further compared these posters to terrorist propaganda. He did mention that he was speaking on his own personal opinions, which I respect. The posters that Mr. Madigan referred to include messages such as all different people are good, stop racism, you are loved, you matter, celebrate diversity, accept others for who they are, equality for all, no place for hate, and yes, Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ plus flag. This is a poster my group made, and all of the examples I'm sharing were posted to the Eisenhower Twitter account late in May. Mr. Madigan's comments are hopefully not a sign that inclusion, diversity, and acceptance are not welcome in our schools. Does the committee stand by the criticism of the student posters, or will the committee stand with the students of Eisenhower and request an apology from Mr. Madigan for his disparaging remarks? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, no comments? That was amazing. I came up...
Give your name and...
Oh, sure, sorry. I'm Chris Ward. I'm at 218 Van Houten Avenue. I'm here largely like everybody else. I think it's a foolish idea to move the election, but my wife and I actually prepared a statement that she just stole from us. We wanted to know, like, back in the spring, I'll read a little bit of it, I guess, even though it's mostly what she said. Back in the spring, following the vandalism of Gourmet Garden, the Township Committee said this does not represent Wyckoff, which is a caring and open community accepting of all. Similar messages were shared after the vandalism and attacks against teachers at Eisenhower, but in June, we'll see the previous speaker, so we want to know how the town council can rectify those two very different stances on acceptance.
Yeah, I'd like to comment. In fact, I'm actually glad it came up, because I did speak at the June meeting, which is on YouTube, so I welcome everybody in the audience to witness. And I'm going to paraphrase exactly what I said, because after coming out of the May Board of Ed meeting, I was very surprised to see right in front of the principal's office, in the front hallway, a poster in particular about Black Lives Matter, which I commented was a Marxist organization.
I believe you called them terrorists.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm just correcting you.
Did I interrupt you?
No.
That's why we're all going to look at it. I said I'd paraphrase.
Okay.
But the most important thing was, my comment was specifically, personally speaking, as a father who had 6 children graduate from Eisenhower School, I specifically recall the children being here. It was Memorial Day on that Monday, and that I was so surprised. I mentioned specifically, Allendale continues to have 7th graders do essays about Memorial Day, patriotism, the sacrifice made to keep us free, and have the ability to do what we do. And I specifically talked about my children, and personally speaking, that they they had posters, but I was very disheartened, or whatever word I use, to see sexually explicit, and I'm going to repeat, sexually explicit, and I have the photo. And I'd be happy to put sexually explicit, perverted, state that's inappropriate, not only for middle school, but for any age. But since that came up, there was no disparaging what any student would do, what they wanted to do, what the staff told them to do, what they were directed to do, and it was just about Memorial Day, and I thought it was inappropriate, and you know what? It was inappropriate.
Can I say one thing before I sit down? I have a 2.5-year-old and a 1-year-old that aren't in the public school system yet, but I hope that one day, when they are in the school system, that they will be loved and accepted for who they are, no matter who they are, when they grow up. So, that's all I'll say. Thank you.
No. And I would also hope that our school district consider our veterans, consider our patriots, consider Memorial Day, and celebrate holidays as well as socially minded items.
I'm back. So just one thing, I know we
You
keep...
have to state your name and
Yeah, Tim Murtha, 383 Canterbury Lane, Wyckoff, New Jersey. I just want to state, I know we keep coming back to $20 million increase, but a couple of things you have to think about. One, healthcare costs for years are going up 10, 12, 15% every year, okay? Two, our salaries were low for a while. So a couple of years ago, when we did a new budget, we bumped up our beginning salaries, because what's happening is that, okay, wait, I can come to Wyckoff for 47, or I can go to Ridgewood for 55 or 56. Where am I going, right? So if Ridgewood, and I teach at Ridgewood, if Ridgewood and Wyckoff go down to TCNJ and get the best student, and he's going to make a decision, he or she's going to make a decision, hey, they're both good schools, but I can make 65 there, I can make 47 there, where am I going, right? Everybody's going to Ridgewood, right? So, we had to raise our starting salaries to keep and go after good quality teachers, right? Two, healthcare costs exploded. The last few years, the fact it went down, that's never happened. Anybody here has their own business knows how expensive healthcare costs. So again, I know $20 million is a big number, but costs have gone up, and those are two of the biggest costs. And the last thing I'm going to say, as a teacher, and going back, if this gets moved to April, if I'm a non-tenured teacher, and every year I have to wait to see where I stand, I'm not going to that school. And if Ridgewood did that to me, and I think I'm a pretty good teacher, I teach with his sister, maybe she says differently, but I think I'm pretty good at what I do, and if I had to know that every year at Ridgewood, if they said to me, hey, we'll let you know, I'm going to get another job somewhere else. And that's my fear. We lose good quality, non-tenured teachers. We can't go after good quality teachers coming out of school. Our schools, the quality of teachers go down, our school system is down, the housing values go down. So, again, that's my last point. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stanley Goodman, 691 Birchwood Drive in Wyckoff. I've known most of you for a lot of years. I wonder what you're really trying to accomplish with this move. The mayor and Tom made it clear that one goal is to take over the budget on the assumption that you can do it better. Well, that is what...
Never came up.
That is absolutely not what we said.
Excuse me, I have the floor.
No, you don't.
I don't? Is that not?
No, we can speak as well. And no, I absolutely never said that. I actually said the goal is to have the taxpayers of Wyckoff have a say on the budget.
Well, the first issue you brought up was the budget. You made the issue, clear that they weren't managing the budget effectively, so you and Tom could get together and do it better. The first issue that Tom brought up...
No, that's absolutely not what I said.
Well, I would say then go listen.
But you cannot misquote what Tom and I said.
Well, I don't have the transcript in front of me, so...
Exactly.
So I'll say maybe to you.
Perhaps that when we were having audio problems, because that was never said.
Well, I say I don't have the transcript in front of me. I'm not looking at the transcript. I'm looking at my notes. So maybe I phrased it wrong, but you clearly made it.
I'll be happy to give you a copy afterwards, because mine are all typed so I could read it, so I wouldn't misspeak.
Well, my point is that you've made it clear that the budget is a significant, is one of your top goals. However, I want to point out that it is not the township committee's job to run the schools. As I understand it, it's up to the voters, if they don't like the school budget, to vote it down, and then the township committee gets to work on it.
Sir, right now, excuse me.
I know,
right
let
now-
me...
No, you just said something
you
that
would
is
let me finish.
absolutely false. No, you just said it is up to the voters to vote up or down the budget. No, as it stands now, they don't have the opportunity to do
They
that.
don't, the school budget, they don't vote up or down the school budget?
No, sir, that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, we used to, I think, saw a lot.
Yes, prior to what Chris Christie did, the taxpayers did have the opportunity to vote up or down the budget, and that is what we are trying to accomplish today.
Well, then, pardon me for my error, but nonetheless, you are taking, by shifting the election, you are politicizing this. You are also making it a management nightmare. If the school board is trying to run the school system, one of the first questions that's ever raised if you're trying to manage a project is, what's your budget? If they don't know what their budget is, how are they really going to run the school system? If they don't find out
At the
until...
beginning of the school year, they don't know what their budget is. So we are moving it to prior to the start of the school year.
You're moving it to April from November.
Right.
And so from April, you've cut 5 months off the planning period. So they're not going to know until...
It's
No,
the
it's the
same.
exact same process.
It's
By
not because
law-
they don't...
By law, they have to present a budget by the end of March, whether it goes to the county superintendent, as it does now, or whether it is presented to the voters.
This is the same point...
For their calendar year, which starts July 1.
This is the same point that Mr. Murda made, that that by delaying the budget, you're not allowing them to plan. You're not allowing them to work with teachers and to offer them pay. And this goes on for all sorts of other things that are part of the school function. The voters, you're delaying the whole process. If the voters don't like what's going on, if they don't like the transparency in the school system, then let them vote them out in November. It's not up to the township committee to take over the school system. That's why we elect...
As you said...
If I may just
absolutely.
interject, I've kept quiet here. I have some things I'd like to say a little later if I get to it. I alluded earlier to the fact that I spent a dozen years on the Wyckoff School Board. After that, I spent 10 years on the Rampointeville School Board. 22 years, and Tom Madigan spent 14 years on the school board. But speaking for myself, 22 years I spent as a school trustee, and we put the budget in front of the voters every year. The years I was budget chairman, I didn't like it, because, you just had no idea what was going to happen. But, so we lived in an age or a time of budget referendums, in my experience, for 22 years. Anyone who has a little gray hair, yourself, Mr. Jorn, maybe others here, moved into Wyckoff for the outstanding schools, which people still do. All those schools were presented and preserved and created in an era of budget referendums. So the fact that we may go back to a budget referendum doesn't scare me at all. For myself, I'm not after the money. This has nothing to do with the budgets. I appreciate Mr. Murtha's remarks. They're right on target. This is not about the money. I'll get to later from my seat where I see why we need to do this. It's not the budgets. So this business that we're going to take over the budgets and control the schools is just, maybe it's off of social media, I don't know. But I offer as proof, for the 22 years that I was involved, we had a budget referendum every year. In fact, what a budget referendum is, it's a test of the voters and the parents of how the school board ran the schools for the years. It's not just about the dollars. It's really not. So...
Well, I certainly look forward to hearing what your reasoning behind it is. So far, the reasons that have been offered are budget and transparency.
Well, I appreciate your response, but did you hear what I said, though?
I
Now, for
did.
22 years, I was involved, and we had great schools, and we had a budget referendum every year. So it's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to be afraid of.
But,
And it's not going to decimate the schools.
but the elections were moved to November, they allowed more planning time, and,
They were only moved to November
under
because
Christie.
Chris Christie was looking for calculations on reductions in taxes, because he told everyone he was going to reduce our taxes. And he was desperate to go places to reduce taxes. So and expenses. So he found this way to eliminate the cost of the April school election for a relatively nominal amount of money for savings, but he could calculate that, and when he ran for re-election or ran for whatever he ran for again, he could say, well, I saved the taxpayers in New Jersey X amount of dollars on those school elections. That's the only reason he did it.
But did you get fewer votes, voter turnout, a smaller voter turnout in April or
What
in
happened
November?
was, it became commingled with the political elections in November, and that's what the mayor's talking about. That's what the mayor's talking about. It's commingled with it.
Well, right,
And
Thank you.
it's come to the point, and I don't want to, I've said enough, I've said enough.
right, now-
5 minutes are up, thank you.
you know, wait, most of my 5 minutes were taken by you all talking. But I want to make the
This is
point,
5 minutes, your time is up.
I want to make the point that 12 New Jersey districts, in the whole state, have April elections. Oakland is the only one in Bergen County. Ridgewood switched to April, and then the voters switched it back to November.
Put it in the voters' hands, no problem.
Is it in the voters' hands, or you,
No problem. That's what we're talking about.
well, you're not talking about that, you're talking about making a decision to do it through the Township Committee.
Okay, thank you, your time is up. Ms. Ho, you've had your 5 minutes.
I know, but I wanted to just address something.
5 minutes, pardon me, but you took my 5 minutes.
Gina Ho, 53 Princeton Avenue, Wyckoff. I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you for your service on the school boards, because obviously you're very knowledgeable on that. How long ago were you on the school
Ms.
board?
Ho, you've had your 5 minutes.
No, I think it's a valid question because you want the township committee, and that's all of you, so I'm
You've had
just...
your 5 minutes, I need to ask you to step away from the
My
microphone.
last year on the school board was 1995, it's not the Stone Age.
So that's quite a long time ago. So it brings me back to the point that
Sorry.
if the Board of Ed are the current specialists with their hands and their heads totally in the mix of what is happening in the school on a day-to-day basis because they have that information, then I trust that we're not going backwards by keeping the school board.
You've had your 5 minutes.
The other thing I wanted to say to you, Mayor,
You've had your 5 minutes.
I'm actually trying to compliment you. Am I allowed to do that?
No, you've had your 5 minutes, whether it's a compliment to me or going against me.
I wanted to
There's some-
thank you for allowing a dialogue when you respond. I'm thankful for that, and I wanted to say thank you because there's a lot of other places don't do that.
I appreciate that.
And I wish that that dialogue continued to allow people to have some input and have a dialogue with you beyond this meeting before you make this decision. That's all I want to say. It was a compliment.
Nice.
And we're going to have our last comment now. Sorry.
Eddie Severs, 179 Box Hollow. My concern in terms of moving it is, while you're providing an opportunity for voters to vote on the budget itself, we know that the voters don't turn out. And whether they're turning out because it's connected to another election, when you're talking about a turnout of 50 or 65%, as opposed to the last April election, which was 19%, and that was a while ago, so let's use more recent information, Oakland, less than 12%. And so you're offering this statement that it's about putting it in the hands of the voters, but you've got a time when everybody's coming out, everybody is making the effort to vote, to put their ballot in the mail,
And you're moving it to a time when we've got folks who are going to be going on vacation in April. There's a school vacation then. That's going to impact turnout. And so,
There's actually a school vacation during the November election as well. It was teacher convention.
My family always
The
went
past
to,
few years, it's been teacher convention week.
my
So,
family always went to Disney World that week.
Yeah,
in November.
there are many people out that week.
I'm talking nicely. I'm trying to share some information, and
I'm sharing information back with you.
Election day is a Tuesday, and the school days off are Thursday and Friday, correct? So,
It's teacher convention week. There are tons of people in Disney World. They actually call Disney World, it's called like New Jersey week in Disney World.
Madigans were always there.
I don't understand what the exchange is.
I'm exchanging information. They're telling me that April is a vacation week. I'm telling you that November is a vacation week.
April is a vacation week. The entire week is off of school, correct? That is not the case in November. November is also when people are used to voting. So that's why the turnout is like that. You have data that says people are not going to turn out. And so if you're looking to engage people, to get their opinions, why not give them the opportunity to express those opinions when you know that they do so, as opposed to reducing it to a number that's 19% or 12%. Thank you.
I'm going to make one more point. My last point that I'd like to make is that I have full faith in the voters of Wyckoff, that on matters that they care about, which includes our Board of Ed, the Board of Ed budget, our school system, I have absolute full faith in the people of Wyckoff that they will turn out when there is an election. And unfortunately, in years past, the order that candidates are in on the ballot is a lottery system. And there have been too many years where candidates 1 and 2 have won because people just pick the first 2 candidates because we don't have enough of a focus on Board of Education. And that's it. I'm going to request a motion to close the public comment period.
Motion to close the public.
Mr. Brewster?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
No.
No, we're requesting to close the public session.
Mayor Rubenstein?
Yes. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the July 20th, 2021 Township Committee work session and regular business meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Brewster?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
Mayor Rubenstein?
Yes. And can I please get the consent agenda, Nancy?
Yes. All matters listed below are considered by the Township Committee to be routine in nature. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If any discussion is desired by the Township Committee, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. 246, authorized acquisition of former Maple Lake property. 247, redemption of tax sale certificate, 393 Kingston Street. 248, approval of vouchers and authorization to pay bills. 249, award of contracts, pay to play, purchase of Maple Lake property. 250, professional service appointment, Harold E. Cook, Esquire. 251, award of contract, semi-annual shade tree work. 252, Chapter 159, 2021 Clean Communities Program. 253, return of certain overpaid taxes, etc. 254, adoption of cybersecurity policies. 255, authorized services of tax assessment office assistant. 256, close, complete 2017-2018 grant reserves. 257, release performance guarantee, 185 Hillcrest Avenue. 258, accept grant, electric vehicle charging station. 259, award contract, improvements to Mountain Avenue. 260, close completed capital grant receivable and authorizations. And C5, closed session pending litigation. We have two ordinances for introduction. Number 1948, an ordinance to modify Chapter 111, Dogs, in the Code of the Township of Wykoff, to modify Section 111-3, Annual Fees, Expiration Date, and Section 111-9, Dogs Running at Large, to increase fees. And number 1949, an ordinance to modify Chapter 106, Cats, in the Code of the Township of Wykoff, Section 106-3E, Annual Fees, to increase fees. And we have three motions. Approve and memorialize application of Luke Pruitt as a probationary firefighter with company number 3. And the township attorney is authorized to settle the litigation matter as instructed and within the parameters set by the TC subcommittee, Township Committee Subcommittee. And the township attorney is authorized to file a lawsuit to compel an insurance carrier to provide coverage. May I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
We have two separate items to be considered separately. Mr. Stanley requested that Resolution 2-261 be considered separately from the consent agenda. Number 261, authorize K-8 Board of Education election change from November to April.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Can we have some discussion on this?
Okay.
All right, this is the time to discuss it. I appear to likely be the only one who's going to vote against this, but I want to discuss it. I moved here from Clifton, from Wykoff in 2009, and I moved here because of the good school system. I have 3 boys in the school system. I have an 8th grader, I have a 7th grader, and I have a 2nd grader that'll be starting in September. One of the benefits of moving here, it was because of the schools from Clifton, is every year in Clifton, the budget would get voted down, and the only people that would show up in the April elections were the people that wanted to vote down the budget. Now, one of the things we pride ourselves on is staying out of our schools as elected officials here on the township dais. We also pride ourselves on being fiscal conservatives. I am big in favor of having the most people decide elected officials in our elections. Now, Nancy, our clerk, provided me the 4 election results from 2008, 2009, 2010, and 2011. Those were the 4 years, and I was able to determine how many people showed up by percentage. 2008, only 28.67% of Wykoff voters appeared. 2009, 26.28% of Wykoff voters voted in the Board of Education election. 2010, 30.24% of Wykoff voters showed up. 2011, 18.70%, and about half of those, the budget was voted down. I also got the last 4 elections in our November elections. 2017, 47.63% of the voters showed up. 2018, 53.91% showed up. 2019, 25.19% showed up. That was the election that only the Assembly was on the top of the table. 2020, 82% of Wykoff voters voted. So I'm a big proponent of having our elected officials elected by the most voters, and November is the one that you're going to get the most interaction of Wykoff voters. So I'm not in favor of moving it to April. I also do not like the fact that the cost of that is going to be borne by the Board of Education. And that's at least $20,000. That's what Oakland just paid for their April election. Now, I know I'm probably losing a lot of political influence on this dais because they're not happy with me being the vote against it.
it was suggested to me that I could just abstain from the vote, because my wife is the the Wyckoff Eisenhower PTO president. But my mom and dad taught me never to shy away from a difficult thing. I've always been taught to there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And I plan on voting no on this, I'm not in favor of, the voters voting on the budget and then it coming to the Township Committee, because I didn't become a Township Committee person in order to start looking at the Board of Education budget. Thank you.
Tim, I have a question. First of all, none of us have told you what to do or to limit your opinion. We respect your opinion very much. So I take issue with the fact that you're telling us that we limited what you wanted to say.
I didn't say you did. I said it was suggested.
You said the Township Committee.
No, I didn't. I said that it was suggested to me by someone, and I didn't name names.
Okay, and, no. No. I'd like to ask you, do you take issue with the taxpayers having a say on the budget of the Board of Education?
I have an issue on moving this election from November to April. And if that's the thing, here's the problem. The statute provides that either the Township Committee or the Board of Education can move this from November to April, but it also says it can move it back. So we're going to get in a game of ping pong with the Board of Education, where we're going to do this, and then they're going to pass a resolution at their next meeting to move it back to November.
No, Tim, it's 4 years from now they can do it. So that's unfortunately incorrect.
Well, we're going to start a ping pong game that's going to last 4 years then.
Well, no, Tim, it can't happen until 4 years from now.
I just got a question about your voter turnout, because you said your voter turnout 2019 was what, 30%?
25.19.
2019?
Yes.
During a general election. So it's similar to voter turnout in previous elections. I mean, elections back when we did have the April election. You know, with the 2019 numbers, I believe individual Board of Ed candidates average about 9% of the vote that people came out to vote for the Board of Ed candidates.
So you're going to focus on 2019?
Well, it's a number.
82% of
Right, it's a presidential election where there was the highest voter registration, the highest voter turnout in the history of the United States of America.
And also a lack of focus on Board of Education, because
I'm not looking to take anything away from the children. I'm not looking to cut the budget of the school board. I respect the school board members. I'm friends with school board members. And I believe moving the election from November to April does take the politics out. There's too many times I've talked to people around town that said, I forgot to vote for the school board because I didn't see it on the ballot. It's so hidden on the bottom of the ballot or on a vote by mail ballot. It's on the back of the ballot. I think taking the politics out of school board elections and the school board candidates will actually benefit the school boards in the long run.
There is no way that politics is going to be taken out of any.
Right, but it's not.
Regardless if you move it from November,
it's not commingled. It's not commingled all in one election where the focus is taken away from school board members, which is very important in town to elect the right school board members. We want the best for our children. Besides the portion of the budget, you want the best for your children. And I would like 100% of the voters to focus on school board members than to have people focusing on what's happening on the president stuff, or what's happening in Senate or Congress. What our school board members have a greater impact on the residents of Wyckoff and the children of Wyckoff. I'd rather the focus be more on the school board members than a whole slate of political people that most people are never going to meet, and it's never going to affect them personally here in Wyckoff. That's one of my biggest justifications. And for a cost-wise, for $4 and change to move an election, to have a better focus on the candidates of the school board, I mean, I think that's a good price for that.
I disagree.
So that's my comment. You want me to type up here?
Yeah.
I'm going to make some comments, and this is where I see it from my seat, okay? And these are in no particular order, and if I miss something, I'll apologize ahead of time. Because unlike Mr. Madigan, I didn't make copious notes here and haven't typed out. First of all, having, as I said earlier, spent 22 years sweating out school budget elections, I'm not after their money. I'm really not. That's not what this is about in my mind. I think they work hard putting a budget together, and I think their funds are spent judiciously, and it's not about the money. From my seat, this process that we are discussing tonight began in February or March, when the first scandal became evident at Eisenhower School. And I'm talking about when the principal and the vice principal suddenly disappeared. And talk about hurting your school's reputation. There were headlines, "Where's the principal gone?" People see this from all over. So that did as much damage to the reputation of the Wyckoff schools as any possible budget defeat and the prospect of any budget defeat did. Right on the heels of that, a scandal broke about a particular teacher who had misbehaved for many, many years. I was surprised. My stepchildren and my nieces had experiences 20, 25 years ago with this individual. And these things happen. Can't prevent them. But there was a sense of rigid control on the school board. No information was given out. I've been part of difficult times with personnel. There are certain things that you are constrained from saying. I understand that. I get it. But there's a lot you can say to put people's fears aside. And because you're dealing with their children who are students at this school. And nothing was said. Nothing was said to allay anyone's fears because of what I perceived, and here again from my seat, as a rigid type of control and silence on the part of the administration and the Board of Education. That's issue number one. That quieted down. Then we come to more recently with the first thing that came out was the posters that Tom Madigan saw on the walls at Eisenhower School. And I was looking for what one of those posters said in the fine print in the circle that was around the one sign. And it was pretty disturbing for a middle school. And it was pretty explicit for a middle school. Then followed the issue of curriculum. And what's in the curriculum in the schools, CRT or whatever you want to call it. And there were no answers. There were platitudes from the administration saying, don't worry about it, but there were no answers. And people were looking for answers. People were looking for information. Parents were looking for information, and they got nothing from the board or the administration, as I saw it. In fact, they came to the municipal leadership for assistance. And from where I saw it, it was women, mostly moms, came to the municipal leadership for some sort of help and getting some sort of a reaction even from the Board of Education and the administration in the schools. The only tool statutorily we have to help them is what we're proposing tonight. That's it. We don't want to run the schools to change the school election, to make them accountable, make them directly accountable to the voters once a year, like I did for 22 years. Not only for the money, but for policies, because it all reflects in that vote, how popular you are, how you're running the schools. And this is where we are, and from where I see it, this is why it's necessary to do this, because of the way the board has comported itself and the way the administration has comported itself. We were told they were stonewalled. Just as an aside, it would seem, based on all the positive compliments I'm hearing about the discussions at the board last night, maybe this is having an effect already. There was an open discussion on the part of board members, especially the board president, who had just been non-responsive almost for 7 or 8 months. So, in my mind, if this brings openness and interaction with the parents and the students, and a sense of the fact that they are there to serve the educational needs of the parents and students of Wyckoff, I think it's worth doing it, and I'm going to support it. Let me finish. It's the only, statutorily, it's the only thing we can do. We can't promote school board candidates. We can't get involved in schools. It's not, excuse me, it's not our purview. They are autonomous, completely separate and apart from municipal government. But the legislature has given us this tool to use, and I think it's time to use it.
All right, well, rather than using this tool, why don't we put it on the ballot for the voters of Wyckoff to decide whether or not they want to move?
Because that's not what the legislature has provided. The legislature didn't say, governing body, you go take a straw poll with the voters before you act. We have a responsibility, I feel, to the people that have approached municipal government for help. That's where I see it from my seat. And I'll say one more thing. One of the things I like about our government here in Wyckoff is we have a new mayor every year. Because, when you're in a position like that, you can develop a sense of self-importance that you really don't deserve, because we're all here individually to serve the residents of Wyckoff. And I'm afraid that may have gone on at the school board for these last 7 or 8 years. And if this helps in that regard, I'm even more in favor of it.
Tom, do you have anything else to add?
Yes. I want to go back just one quick minute, as my practice was earlier, just to hit on any comments, just for clarification. I too appreciate Tim Murtha and his comments about, in the details that we saw tonight, about how hard he worked to try to put a budget together. But I also wanted to just remind everybody that this governing body last year during COVID, when the K-8 budget was being prepared, we decided from the governing body, we'd take money out of our surplus to have a zero increase in the budget, because there was so much uncertainty, people were losing jobs, we didn't know. The high school board of education did the same thing. So they had substantial savings in health care, and with some manipulation, they were able to also provide no increase. We reached out to the K-8 board, and we're told that there's nothing they could do, they couldn't adjust it, they were very concerned, they weren't concerned for the certainty, and they passed their budget with a 1.99% increase, which was approximately $1 million increase. Yet, the same budget that they just passed a year ago generated $3.2 million surplus with the $1 million. Point is, if they had given the taxpayers zero, they only would have had a $2.2 million surplus. But anyways, my comments in this portion, before we get to calling the question, just to summarize what I said earlier, last night, the public spoke. They clearly spoke about, at the school board meeting, about transparency, communications, accountability. The parents, as well as the public, are frustrated. And as Mr. Boonstra said, they've been reaching out to the Township Committee for a long time. We clearly understand that the Board of Ed is autonomous for all their policies, their practices, and their budgeting. Nothing changes. It's 47% of the budget, and personally, I just want to share that I have 7 children who went through the Wyckoff schools, all when the budgets were voted on in the month of April. It was really an opportunity for parents and the public to endorse and support the policies and the educational direction of the board and their curriculum with an educational and fiscal focus. I was also a member of the Rampo Indian Hills Board of Education for over 14 years and was guided and spent all my time on 2 focuses. One, a student's education, the second, the taxpayer. Everything else doesn't matter. When you're in the Board of Ed, that's what you should focus on, and that's what's important, and I feel that I upheld my own pledge to do that. If we look at tonight's resolution that we're proposing, moving the meeting on the Board of Education from November to April, it clearly states and summarizes very succinctly, I'm sure you have copies of it, okay? It will ensure improved communications to the public in the interest of full transparencies of the various educational and financial aspects of the proposed budget, and would also foster full disclosure by the Board of Education to the parents, the public, and taxpayers concerning the accountability for educational and financial directors of the schools. Second point, whereas the Board of Ed meeting would be in April, the Board of Education budget constitutes approximately 47% of the property tax bill each year. Third, whereas moving the Board of Election to April really allows the residents, as we've heard tonight, to focus on that particular election without it being part of a larger general election ballot. It may encourage additional candidates to run for a seat on the board, since petitions for the April election are due in late February or March instead of July. So those are kind of the 3 reasons, and this is also the background that I have, that I'm providing in my direction on this resolution.
Do you have anything else?
No, please.
My final comment before we vote is that I absolutely have full faith in the voters of Wyckoff. And I welcome an opportunity for everyone to concentrate on the Board of Education elections. And I find it in the best interest of our children to not have our Board of Education elections on the back side, the B side of a ballot for vote by mail, which is becoming a very popular way to vote. Our kids deserve more than that. They deserve the full attention of the public when voting for their Board of Ed candidates and on the budget. So Nancy, can we get a
I just have one more comment, and I think I speak for everyone here. Tim, your vote is your vote, and I respect your vote one way or the other. And tomorrow's another day, and we have to continue governing Wyckoff, and we will do that with no hard feelings, and your vote is your vote. In fact, I understand Tom Madigan's going to throw us a vote that I'm not crazy about 10 minutes too. But I feel the same way. It's got nothing to do with how we govern.
And as a
Okay.
Township committee, we vote
Yeah.
as individuals.
Correct.
We each have an individual
Yeah.
mind
Right.
and individual opinions, and you vote for each of us
Right.
individually, and we do not vote as a block.
Right.
We have individual opinions, so Tim, I very much
Yeah.
appreciate your vote.
Yeah.
If nothing else, Nancy, could you ask for a vote?
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
No.
Mayor Rubenstein?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Madigan earlier requested that motion B from the original agenda be considered separately from the consent agenda. That is for appointment of police sergeant effective September 1, 2021. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comment? Comment?
You can make a comment.
I just wanted to comment, I saw this on our agenda, and I just wanted to remind my fellow board members that, and I sent everybody a memo today concerning this. There's nothing to do with the particular person that this applies to, but I just want to remind everybody that our ordinance states that we can have up to 10 sergeants, which provides us as a governing body the flexibility in planning for successor officers. I also want to reiterate that nothing was budgeted, and I'm concerned about this incremental cost. And the third issue is, for the record, I just want to be sure that we would not be setting a precedent for 8 sergeants. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to make one point in that, Rudy and I are both the police commissioners in town. We sit on the police committee, and it is the full recommendation of the police committee here in Wyckoff that we appoint an additional sergeant.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. I would just, I'm not going to read any of this, but there's also a memo prepared by Chief Murphy, which kind of embodies the recommendation of the police committee, and I would just refer you to items 2, 8, and 10, especially the last sentence, for the reasons largely that we're doing this. And I don't see this, Tom, to just answer your question, I don't see this as setting a past practice. We've had anywhere from 7 sergeants to 9 sergeants over the last however many years. And as you say, our ordinance allows up to 8, so I don't have a concern about that. I just want to briefly read, even though he is not here, we have one of our officers here tonight. The officer we're promoting is...
By the way, point of personal privilege, yeah. I would prefer that we vote, since I'm going to vote no, so it's clearly not about the officer of high caliber and strong character.
Yep.
That would be good for the position. It has nothing to do with it.
Fair enough.
And I would prefer the personal privilege to take the excitement of his appointment.
Well, I was almost going to hold this, and we're going to have a little ceremonial thing in a couple of weeks.
We can hold it,
Let's
hold that to the 14th meeting, and we have the ceremony for Sergeant.
And then one other thing, if I may, point of order, just for the record, the comments that I made, I wish them to be reflected in the minutes exactly as I stated them. I'll provide you a written copy.
Thank you.
Can we get a vote?
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
No.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
Mayor Rubenstein?
Yes.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
And I just want to suggest that this section of the minutes reflecting the appointment to police sergeant be reflected that the individual who's being appointed is Patrolman Ryan Newman.
Yeah.
So it's clear in the meeting.
I was going to mention that here. Okay,
Well,
thanks,
we'll
Bob. That's
just
fine.
keep his bio for
That's
the
fine.
14th when he and his family are here.
Yep. And the effective date is September 1st, by the way.
That's correct.
Thanks, Rudy.
Yeah.
Nancy, our ordinances?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have 5 ordinances for public hearing further consideration. The first is 1942, which is an ordinance to provide certain capital improvements in the Township of Wyckoff and to provide for and authorize appropriations of $594,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for the court-ordered 33-unit housing rehabilitation obligation. For second reading by title only, and a copy of this ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall, where public notices are customarily posted, and copies have been made available to members of the general public of the township who have requested the same. All these ordinances have also been posted on our website.
I move the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein?
Yes, this is the time and place for the public hearing on ordinance 1942, and all persons who wish to be heard, please state your name and address before making your statement.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to place on the record that this ordinance has been reviewed by the township's professional planner for affordable housing, and she concurs with this ordinance, and that the funds are in place.
Thank you.
Seeing no one, I move that the public hearing on ordinance 1942 be closed.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein?
Yes.
Be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Wykoff that ordinance number 1942, after public hearing and further consideration, is hereby adopted, and the municipal clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish the notice of final passage of said ordinance in the official newspaper for the township as provided by law.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Next, we have ordinance number 1943, which is an ordinance to modify and supplement Chapter 108 of the Code of the Township of Wykoff, Construction Codes Uniform, to amend Section 108-3 fee schedule to increase certain fees for uniform construction code permits. For second reading by title only, and a copy of this ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall where public notices are customarily posted, and copies have been made available to members of the general public of the township who have requested the same.
I move the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes, this is the time and place for the public hearing on ordinance 1943, and all persons who wish to be heard, please state your name and address before making your statement.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to place on the record that this ordinance has been reviewed and recommended by the Township's Construction Code official and the Township Committee Subcommittee, and is recommended for Township Committee adoption.
Thank you.
I move that public comment on the ordinance be closed.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Wykoff that ordinance number 1943, after public hearing and further consideration, is hereby adopted, and the municipal clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish the notice of final passage of said ordinance in the official newspaper for the township as provided by law.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Next, we have ordinance number 1944, which is an ordinance to amend Chapter 113 of the Code of the Township of Wykoff, fees, for second reading by title only, and a copy of this ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall, where public notices are customarily posted, and copies have been made available to members of the general public of the township who have requested the same.
I move the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes, this is the time and place for the public hearing on ordinance 1944, and all persons who wish to be heard, please state your name and address before making your statement.
Madam Mayor, this ordinance has been recommended by the Construction Code official and the Township Zoning Enforcement Officer, and it's been reviewed and recommended by a Township Committee Subcommittee, who all concur that on its recommendation for adoption.
Thank you.
I move the public hearing on ordinance 1944 be closed.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Wykoff that ordinance number 1944, after a public hearing and further consideration, is hereby adopted, and the municipal clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish the notice of final passage of said ordinance in the official newspaper for the township as provided by law.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Next, we have ordinance 1945, which is an ordinance to modify Chapter 148, peddling and soliciting in the Code of the Township of Wykoff, to modify Section 148-9, license fees, to increase the fees. For second reading by title only, and a copy of this ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall where public notices are customarily posted, and copies have been made available to members of the general public of the township who have requested the same.
I move the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes. This is the time and place for public hearing on ordinance 1945, and all persons who wish to be heard, please state your name and address before making your statement.
Madam Mayor, this ordinance has been recommended for adoption by the police chief, whose department implements it, and the Township Committee Subcommittee as well.
Seeing no one, I move that the public hearing on ordinance 1945 be closed.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Stanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Wykoff that ordinance number 1945, after public hearing and further consideration, is hereby adopted, and the municipal clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish the notice of final passage of said ordinance in the official newspaper for the township as provided by law.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Next, we have ordinance 1946, which is an ordinance to amend Chapter 94, Buildings Inspection of, in the Code of the Township of Wykoff to amend Section 94-5, fees to increase certain fees. For second reading by title only, and a copy of this ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall, where public notices are customarily posted, and copies have been made available to members of the general public of the township who have requested the same.
I move the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes, this is the time and place for the public hearing on ordinance 1946, and all persons who wish to be heard, please state your name and address before making your statement.
Madam Mayor, this ordinance has also been recommended by the Township's Construction Code official and a Township Committee subcommittee.
Thank you.
Seeing no one, I move that the public hearing on ordinance 1946 be closed.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Wykoff that ordinance number 1946, after public hearing and further consideration, is hereby adopted, and the municipal clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish the notice of final passage of said ordinance in the official newspaper for the township as provided by law.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Finally, we have ordinance number 1947, which is an ordinance to amend Chapter 116, Fire Prevention Administration of the Code of the Township of Wykoff, Section 116-7, non-life hazard fees, and 116-8, permit fees, to provide a new and increased fee schedule. For second reading by title only, and a copy of this ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board at Town Hall, where public notices are customarily posted, and copies have been made available to members of the general public of the township who have requested the same.
I move the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Can I just ask a question? Does this include real estate fees in terms of permit fees? Because I want to make sure I abstain. Okay, then yes. This is the time and place for public hearing on ordinance 1947, and all persons who wish to be heard, please state your name and address before making your statement.
Madam Mayor, for one last time, this ordinance has been recommended by the fire marshal and the licensed fire subcode official and the construction code official, as well as the Township Committee subcommittee.
Thank you.
Seeing no one, I move that the public hearing on ordinance 1947 be closed.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Wykoff that ordinance number 1947, after public hearing and further consideration, is hereby adopted, and the municipal clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish the notice of final passage of said ordinance in the official newspaper for the township as provided by law.
I move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes. May I have a motion to and a second to adjourn the business
Motion to
meeting?
adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Madigan?
Yes.
Mr. Melchiong?
Yes.
Mr. Shanley?
Yes.
And Mayor Rubenstein.
Yes.
Do you have it on your work document?